Last year I travelled to Sub-Saharan Africa for the first time. My wife Nat and I set up on one-way tickets, with nothing planned beyond our first stop and little idea what to expect. This turned out to be the trip of a lifetime, lasting 6 months and spanning 8 different countries, from tropical islands to remote desert. We travelled from coastal cities to world-famous landmarks and witnessed more wildlife than I ever thought possible.
My name is Ricky Dunn, and I hope you enjoy seeing some of our journey and a bit of the natural beauty we encountered across southern Africa.
Our adventure began in the Kingdom of Eswatini, a small landlocked country that was previously known as Swaziland. I was a little daunted by the prospect of driving in Africa, but as we set off from the airport in our hire car, I was pleasantly surprised to find excellent roads with almost no traffic. 40 minutes later, we approached our home for the next 4 weeks, a 2-bedroom house in a private game reserve called Dombeya. This home is what drew us to Eswatini, and it didn't disappoint. Every morning we would wake up to the sounds of birds and animals right outside our door. The reserve has no predators, and we had no neighbours in sight, just endless grounds to explore at our leisure. Pulling ourselves away from Dombeya was never easy. It was safe, peaceful, and we had everything we could want. But when we did venture further afield, I discovered Eswatini to be a beautiful and diverse country. Seeing wildlife was our top priority, and although the national parks aren't as expansive as better known safari destinations, they are much more affordable and there's still a lot of wildlife. Seeing these animals for the first time was so exciting, and I was surprised how easy it was to find them. However, my highlight from Eswatini was hanging out with a couple of local guides, who taught us about their country and shared stories about life in one of the world's last remaining absolute monarchies. If you'd like to see more, I made a dedicated video all about our time here. But in a nutshell, Eswatini is a fascinating country, and it proved to be the perfect starting point for our African adventure. On a sunny morning in mid-June, we departed Eswatini for South Africa, with our sights set on Kruger National Park. Taking our hire car over the border cost $100, but was otherwise an easy process. It would have only taken a couple of hours to get to Kruger, but we had learned of a scenic road trip called the Panorama route and couldn't resist a little detour. It's a beautiful drive with some worthwhile stops. The lush rainforests of Graskop Gorge have a number of activities, including a beautiful boardwalk. Further along the drive, we found some great little hikes to expansive viewpoints. And even though we only saw a section of the Panorama route, it was a detour worth taking. But after grabbing a bite to eat, we were both eager to get to the main event. Spanning nearly 20,000 square kilometres, Kruger National Park is over 20 times the size of New York City. There is so much wildlife here, and I loved having a car so we could explore at our own pace. Areas near the entrance can get busy, but as we ventured further into the park, it was just us and the animals. As a general rule, you can't leave your vehicle. After all, hungry lions could be hiding. But fortunately, animals rarely seemed concerned by our presence, and we were able to spend loads of time peacefully observing them. After a lot of research, we made a last-minute decision to stay overnight inside the park and booked into a property called Rhino Post Safari Lodge. Staying within Kruger comes at a premium, but I think it's the way to go. Our stay included game drives at dawn and dusk when the park is closed to the general public. This is when animals are their most active, and it gave us our best moments. Exploring the park after hours was exhilarating, but much colder than I expected. Though I quickly forgot about temperatures when a pride of lions surrounded us in the early hours of the morning. Wildlife sightings in Kruger and most other national parks are unpredictable. However, in just 24 hours, we caught glimpses of all of Africa's famed Big Five animals and so many other creatures. I have no doubt we were very lucky, and for anyone planning a trip, I'd recommend staying longer. Ready for city life, we then flew into a cold and windy Cape Town. I first saw this city on the TV as a kid watching Australia play cricket. I've wanted to visit ever since, and it was just as spectacular as I imagined. South Africa is known as the Rainbow Nation. There's a whopping 11 official languages and a huge amount of cultural diversity. I found it hard not to get caught up in the city's energy. Our home was an apartment in a district called the Waterkant. It is a popular place for visitors, but is quiet at this time of year. When the sun was out, I loved exploring our local area, but the winter weather wasn't great, and we figured Cape Town would be much more fun in the spring. So after a couple of weeks mapping out an itinerary, we departed and made our way to the world's fourth largest island country of Madagascar. Madagascar is like another world. It's sometimes referred to as the eighth continent because 90% of its wildlife is found nowhere else. This includes their much-loved lemurs, of which there are over 100 different species. Though sadly, much of the country's forests have been destroyed and their numbers in the wild are low. After arriving into the capital of Antananarivo, we flew north to the popular holiday island of Nosy Bay. Nosy Bay's capital, Hellville, can be hectic, but a short drive away are tropical beaches and low-key resorts. It's the perfect place for a chilled-out vacation by the beach. Seeking even more tranquility, we made our way to the nearby car-free island of Nosy Komba. Jumping onto a skinny wooden boat with almost everything we own wasn't the transfer I imagined, but it's a fun way to get around. I got used to this method of transport too, as the only way to get around the island is by boat or on foot. Nosy Komba provided an unspoilt paradise that reminded me of parts of Southeast Asia from many years ago. There's little development, inexpensive seafood, and it offers an excellent place to escape the world for a little. On the move again, we flew to Morondava, a small coastal city often visited by tourists keen to see the iconic Avenue of the Baobabs. We hired a guide to take us to the Baobabs, and after a short 20-minute drive, we were surrounded by them. These trees are hundreds of years old. Baobab trunks can grow to as large as 10 meters in circumference, and they can reach heights of up to 25 meters. This section of the road is the main attraction. It's shared by pedestrians, animals and cars, so there's generally a bit of activity. Away from the main avenue, there's a big area to drive around and see other trees, like these intertwined beauties known as Baobabs in love. Sunrise along Avenue of the Baobabs was the highlight. It was so peaceful, with only locals for company. By contrast, sunset was very busy. Normally I prefer to avoid the crowds, but the energy from all these happy people was infectious. After 2 days of Baobabs, it was almost time to say goodbye. Our guide seemed happy about the last minute booking, and on the way back to Morondava, he stopped a passing rickshaw to buy a chicken for his son. Moments like this were not uncommon, and while I felt sorry for the poor chook, I was assured it would make an excellent pet before one day becoming dinner. Infrastructure in Madagascar is limited, and flights out of Morondava were fully booked. So to get back to the capital, we took a 16-hour bus ride through the countryside. Even major highways in Madagascar are often unpaved, and I'd only recommend this journey for budget-conscious or more adventurous travellers. Dodging potholes, wildlife and people, while winding around hills made for some nervous moments, especially at night. Antananarivo, or Tana as it's commonly known, is a busy city. 4 million people live in this metropolis, but tourists generally don't hang around long. We spent over a week here, and although there are some nice parts and a few good places to eat, a couple of days would have been enough for me. Still, spending time here and travelling around Madagascar provided so many memorable moments, while also giving me an appreciation for some of the challenges faced by many of the local people. Life in this ex-French colony isn't easy, and it's a country where tourism dollars can make a real difference. Madagascar is a country well worth visiting. Just know it probably warrants a little more planning than other destinations, at least if you want to avoid any unexpected minibus rides. I was excited for our next destination as we set off for the wildlife mecca of Kenya. When researching this trip around Africa, we quickly decided Kenya was a must visit, not only for its culture and wildlife, but also for its 1,400 kilometres of Indian Ocean coastline. Keen to see if Africa's beaches lived up to the hype, we booked an apartment for a month in Diani Beach. Diani is a resort town with lots of good restaurants in idyllic locations. There's plenty of fresh seafood and also some excellent Indian food thanks to migration from India that started 130 years ago. The beach itself didn't disappoint. The sand is soft and the water is crystal clear. The only downside here was often being approached by vendors while relaxing. It's hard to blame anyone for trying to make a living, but sometimes our apartment complex proved a more peaceful alternative. A short 40-minute flight north, our next stop was the island of Lamu, best known for its UNESCO-listed Old Town. Lamu was founded in the 12th century, and it's one of the best preserved Swahili settlements of East Africa. There are no cars, and donkeys are used to transport people and goods through a myriad of narrow alleys and along the beach. These sweet creatures popped up everywhere, often working unsupervised. It's a Muslim-dominated island with some of the most friendly locals I've met on my travels. Tourism is clearly appreciated here, and I reckon it's a worthy stop to see a different side of Kenya. For most people coming to this country, the top priority is to go on safari, and we were no different. Kenya is the birthplace of the safari. The word itself is Swahili for journey, and few places are as highly regarded for them as the Masai Mara. We flew into the Mara North Conservancy, a part of the Mara owned by the Masai people. This region restricts visitor numbers and allows experiences not possible in the main reserve, like being able to go off-road and see animals away from the crowds. Our accommodation was on the Mara River at a property called Blixen Camp. This is an iconic property in a special location. A non-stop procession of animals would drop by for a drink and offered constant entertainment. While staying here, I filmed the first of 4 episodes for a series called The Stay. It was an idea I had for a travel show, and each episode is focused on a different destination while showcasing an amazing property. If you'd like to learn more about the Mara North Conservancy and Blixen Camp, you can watch it at thestay.tv. The Masai Mara lived up to its reputation, but I had no idea what to expect from our next safari destination, as we were driven north from Nairobi to Samburu National Reserve. This was quite a contrast to the lush plains of the Masai Mara, and at times it reminded me more of Australia's outback. Our accommodation was a luxury tented property along the Owasso-Nuro River called Soroi Larsens Camp. This one definitely has the wow factor, and I don't know what I liked more. The property, the wonderful people that work here, or the incredible game drives through this epic landscape. Watching elephants mate was quite a sight, as was this cheetah mother unsuccessfully hunting and then being consoled by her cubs. Even without animals, the landscapes here are captivating, especially in the golden glow of the late afternoon sun. This is still a bit of an undiscovered gem, and you can learn more about the unique animals found in the region and a little about the guest experience at Soroi Larsens Camp in another episode of The Stay. Over 6 weeks, Kenya had provided so many of the quintessential African travel experiences I'd been hoping for. The wildlife and the big smiles of the friendly people are just some of the reasons so many travellers flock here, and I reckon it lives up to the hype. Taking to the skies again, we flew south for a couple of hours to Victoria Falls. The falls lie on the border between Zambia and Zimbabwe. Some here call it the smoke that thunders because of the towering mist and roaring sound it produces. After flying to Zambia, we did the border crossing a few times. With US dollars on hand for a visa, the process was easy. There are tons of viewpoints to see the falls, especially within Zimbabwe's Victoria Falls National Park. But I reckon the best views are from the air. These helicopter joyrides are popular for a reason. By this point it was September, which is the dry season here. Many will tell you Victoria Falls are best witnessed after the rains, when the water is cascading at full force. But the advantage of coming at this time can be less mist and better visibility. Whatever the case, I thought it looked brilliant. The region around the falls is quite touristy, so I was happy to be based 22 kilometres up the Zambezi River at a property called Chundu Island. This is a luxury tented camp located on a private island within Zambezi National Park. It's accessed from Zimbabwe, but Zambia is almost within throwing distance. It's hard to imagine a more idyllic location, and I'd have happily spent days just lazing by the river and watching the world go by. But with no shortage of things to do, we were up early to explore the national park. The wildlife here can't compete with the numbers and diversity in Kenya, but we still saw a lot of animals. Most of the other activities here revolve around the Zambezi River, from a leisurely sunset cruise to kayaking and fishing. As you might have guessed, this property and region is also covered in the stay, so please check that out to discover more. Suffice to say, before this trip, I assumed a visit to Victoria Falls was just about seeing the waterfall. While seeing the falls was fantastic, it was the mighty Zambezi River that took the cake for me, and this was another highlight of our trip. From both the Zambian and Zimbabwean side of the falls, Botswana and the wildlife haven of Chobe National Park is just over an hour's drive away. Up at the crack of dawn, we set off on a day trip. The border crossing into Botswana was a breeze, and before we knew it, we were on the Chobe River. Seeing animals from the water offered a different perspective, especially watching the huge number of elephants that call this park home. Since arriving in Africa, I'd learned a lot about these smart social creatures, and it makes me sad to think how many are in captivity. This is clearly the way they're meant to live. The morning was quite tranquil, but driving Chobe National Park in the afternoon wasn't quite as idyllic. There were plenty of animals, but lots of tours were exploring the same small section of the park, and we were crammed into a full safari vehicle. Clearly we'd been spoilt on previous safaris, and watching wildlife from the middle seat with lots of other tourists simply can't compete with the more intimate experiences. Cost for safaris can add up quickly, but as a general rule, I reckon it's worth spending the extra money to be on a private or a small group tour, particularly if you're hoping to see a certain animal. Our time in Botswana was short, and I would love to return and spend more time in the country one day, but spring was now in full swing, and we were due back in South Africa. Returning to Cape Town, the city was bathed in sunshine. We rented a home in the suburb of Sea Point, which along with the neighbouring beachside suburbs offers an enviable lifestyle.
It's all too soon, my dove heart is tearing apart from you.
It's a beautiful place, but crime is high in Cape Town, and the city suffers from regular power cuts known as load shedding. In upmarket areas like Sea Point, private police forces are hired to provide safety for the local area. This doesn't solve the underlying problems, but it does allow people to enjoy the city with relative peace of mind. I generally felt as safe here as I did in other parts of Africa, but throughout this adventure we tried to avoid attention by leaving our valuables at home. The food in Cape Town is excellent. Ubers are cheap, and there are endless things to do around the city and further afield. A cable car to the top of Table Mountain was a favourite for me. It's close to the city, and the views from up top are fantastic. But my most memorable day was a little further afield, when we hired a car to do the Chapman Peak Drive. This is a stunning road trip. The day took us all the way down to Africa's southern tip, where we were blown away by the Cape of Good Hope. Nearby we had the chance to see penguins at Boulders Beach. There's barely another person here in November, but loads of these cute penguins, and they're hard to miss. Time had gone way too fast, and after 6 months, only one country remained to round out our trip. We left South Africa, bound for sand-swept Namibia. Boasting the world's oldest desert and some of the world's biggest sand dunes, Namibia made an impression before we'd even landed. It's more than twice the size of Japan, but only has around 2 million people calling it home, making it one of the world's least densely populated countries. We started with a few days in Walvis Bay and nearby Swakopmund. An eerie fog was common along the coast, and it dominated most mornings. When that disappeared, this laid-back region was transformed. Only minutes from our accommodation were these colourful flamingos. It's a popular spot, but still very peaceful. A short drive away, these massive sand dunes made for a satisfying little workout and offered expansive views over the desert. I was fascinated by Namibia's landscape and I wanted to see more. We hired a 4-wheel drive and embarked on an intimidating 6-hour journey up the Skeleton Coast. This is one of the world's most remote places. The beaches are littered with shipwrecks, and when the sky is grey and the wind is blowing, they can be quite a sight. As we drove north, we passed an abandoned mine and the odd bit of wildlife, but not much else. Not that I needed anything else. While the fog would come and go, the views on this drive were mesmerising. Late afternoon, we reached our destination, a property called Shipwreck Lodge. It's not just the design that impressed here. The logistics of running a property this calibre in such a far-flung location must take an enormous effort. I love this room, and I found myself captivated by these landscapes, even more so after heading inland along a dry riverbed. It was amazing to see so much wildlife in this harsh environment, and going on a nature drive here is a fantastic experience. Back along the coast, we found a huge seal colony. There are thousands of them here, and although they're smelly, they're great fun to watch. My surprise highlight in the Skeleton Coast came from an afternoon traversing the sand dunes on a quad bike. There was nothing but sand for miles, and we had the opportunity to do some sandboarding. All of this was exhilarating, and the drive back while the sun set was stunning. If you'd like to see more, Shipwreck Lodge and the Skeleton Coast are featured on the stay, and the experience staying at this lodge was the icing on the cake for Namibia and for an unforgettable trip around Africa.
I hope you enjoyed seeing a little of our trip through Southern Africa. It was an amazing experience, and it's not lost on me how privileged we are to have been able to do all of it. Some of you will know we've travelled to a lot of places, but Africa was by far the most daunting of them. Knew very little about the different countries on the continent, and logistically it's not easy to get from A to B, and it can be quite expensive. If there's one destination that I would recommend using a travel agent for, particularly if you're a less experienced traveller, it's a trip to Africa. If they don't save you money, they're certainly going to save you a lot of time and probably a few headaches. Since coming home, I've been asked a lot about safety. Look, we did our due diligence. We read a lot of government warnings, we took out a very good travel insurance policy, and we didn't go out a great deal at night. When we did, we dressed conservatively and tried not to show off any electronics. But I do suspect that a lot of trips are like this, but bad news always travels a lot further and a lot faster than good news. The stay I've mentioned a few times during this, that was such an amazing experience, and I'm really, really happy we chose to do it. Not only did we get to stay in those incredible properties, but we got to spend time with some really, really good quality guides, and it makes such a difference to the experience, from getting a deeper understanding about the culture, the animals, the wildlife, and everything that makes Africa special. So a piece of advice is to try and find some good guides, and if not, at least spend an extended period in some spots, because it's the interactions with the people that really made this trip, and it was the most enriching part. And when I look back, it's what puts a smile on my face. Please do check out The Stay. You can see it at thestay.tv or on YouTube if you search thestay.tv. But for now, that's it. I hope you enjoyed watching this. My name's Ricky Dunn. Hope you'll tune in again soon. Bye for now.